Camera's live.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our regular board meeting for February 24th, 2021. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. And also, I would like to remark that you may notice a color theme at our board table or our virtual board screen today. And just remark on that today is Pink Shirt Day. And I think all of us are showing through our attire today our support for anti-bullying initiatives throughout our region and across our country, and really remark on how important it is that we support all of our communities in minimizing bullying and helping those who suffer from that in supportive ways as we move forward, including folks who might be given to bullying through some of the circumstances that their life has presented to them. And with that, we will get underway. Ms. Legault, do we have any additions or changes to our agenda?
None.
Thank you. So a motion to approve the agenda as presented, moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Nicholson. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item M1 is the adoption of the regular board meeting minutes of February 10th, 2021.
Thank you. If there's no errors or omissions, a motion to adopt those minutes. Moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director Staples. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No business arising, and there have been no submissions for public input period. So I guess moving on to delegations, and I will admit the two participants into the meeting. Okay, so item D1 is a presentation by Tanis Leviniak, Mill Springs resident, regarding the Mill Springs wastewater treatment plant project. And this is for information. She's also joined by Kevin Little.
Welcome. Sorry, Tanis, I might get your last name wrong, so if it's okay, welcome, Tanis. And where's our other participant? Is he in the meeting?
Oh, video off. So.
Okay, thank you. So I can't see you on the screen, but welcome as well, Mr. Little. And please go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right. Just to confirm, you can still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. And no worries on the last name. I don't get it right sometimes. It's not the easiest last name. All right, so I don't have any PowerPoint presentation or anything to share. I'm here to read a statement on behalf of members of the community. So first and foremost, my name is Tanis Leviniak. I'm a resident of Mill Springs Village in Mill Bay. My husband and I purchased our home in 2016. We occupy lot 138 in our strata of Mill Springs Village, which is a mere 4 lots over from the current wastewater treatment plant. So when we moved to Mill Springs, we looked at several homes prior to purchasing ours. We looked at one nearer to the treatment plant. It was quite a substantial humming noise that was a bit concerning. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback there. Can you still hear me?
I just recommend, Mr. Little, if you mute your microphone, when other microphones are left on, sometimes we do get that echo.
Okay, there we go. That sounds better. Okay, so we opted for our lot because it was further away from the treatment plant, while still also meeting our needs. But when we purchased, there was really no discussion of future development plans for the wastewater treatment plant. So before I begin, I'd like to premise my presentation today with a statement that the information that I'm sharing includes facts as I understand them based on information that's been provided to date. And some of that has just been based on discussion within the community because, to be frank, there hasn't been a lot of information provided to us as residents. So from what I understand, the treatment plant was originally constructed by the developer who passed the construction costs onto the community through home purchase. When purchasing in Mill Springs Village, owners bought into a self-contained community. The local treatment system handled only sewage from within the community. For purchasers who were concerned, the risk was assessed and accepted. The CVRD took over ownership of the facility at no cost and charged Mill Springs residents to cover operating costs. So this transfer in care, custody, and control maintained the original level of risk and was generally viewed as positive by our residents. So what changed? Several treatment plants in Mill Bay needed major upgrades or complete replacement. Some are privately controlled and some are CVRD controlled. The CVRD decided that the most cost-effective approach was to collect all the raw sewage from surrounding areas and to pipe it into a retrofitted Mill Springs Village facility, which had been handed over by the residents. This project now is underway with a $5.9 million grant from the federal government. It's a major undertaking that solves several problems for the CVRD. However, it creates multiple risks to the residents of our community. So I'm speaking to you today on behalf of many residents in our community because we've generally been uninformed through this process. Communication has been, for the most part, unidirectional. There was no community survey or vote and no approval that I'm aware of. Residents haven't been provided any opportunity to oversee the project. As this project impacts 267 homes in Mill Springs Village, I strongly disagree with this lack of community engagement through the project lifecycle. So my husband and I work in the construction industry. We work globally on infrastructure, commercial, and industrial projects through initial design to commissioning. So we're very aware of the risks that these facilities have that are placed near homes in residential areas. We assessed the risk when we purchased our home, understanding that the size and scale of the facility would not change. Mill Springs Village residents are being forced to take on new risk with no benefit or protection that we're aware of. The CVRD benefits from this project, as do the residents of neighboring communities, but there's really no upside to the residents of Mill Springs. This project has the potential to impact housing prices and the health and safety of the community members should there be a failure during construction, commissioning, or operations. So I'm here today to challenge the board on the authorization of this project. Its cancellation of the AAP process midway, which is contrary to the government of British Columbia's requirements, and to request that our questions on facility design, mitigations, and controls, as well as risk management process, be answered. But before we get to that, I'm going to provide a brief overview of what has transpired to date based on the information that I know. These meetings, to start out, Kevin Little and Gary Orton of the previous Mill Springs Village Strata Council, along with the Mill Springs Village Strata Management Rep, communicated with members of the CVRD, including Brian Dennison, Vanessa Thompson, and Todd Etherington several times between April 2019 and May of 2020. These meetings began as information sessions between the CVRD and Mill Springs Village and included requests from Mill Springs to have environmental testing completed by a third party to ensure safe precautions were being observed for our residents. The tests were to include baseline measurements prior to construction and continuous measurements during and post-construction to analyze the effects of the increase of sewage introduced into the wastewater treatment facility. This request was originally agreed to by Brian Dennison on behalf of the CVRD. Another request was to guarantee the ability to reverse the flow of raw sewage from other communities back to the original source if the upgraded Mill Springs Village facility failed to perform as per design. In May of 2020, Brian Dennison phoned Kevin Little and informed him that a workaround had been found to the AAP process and that no requests would be granted to Mill Springs Village. To date, Mill Springs Village residents have not been provided with any environmental study or testing results. In August of 2020, the CVRD distributed a mailout that said construction would commence later in 2020. Construction began in December without notice to residents of Mill Springs Village. In January 14th, due to the lack of information from the CVRD, a registered letter was sent from Kevin Little and Gary Orton to Alistair McGregor, Sonia Firstino, and Blaise Salmon. There's been no response from this letter from any of the parties to date. According to a guide for local governments in British Columbia, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, 3 important rules were surpassed by the alternate approval process. And from my understanding, you guys are probably far better versed in this than I am, but there's 3 requirements that were not met. Following the proper timing to allow community involvement, using transparency and stewardship of public trust. And once the AAP process begins, it must be completed. So you may ask, why are we so concerned about a little wastewater treatment plant? And a lot of people have pointed out that, hey, this is a small facility. Don't be so concerned about it. It's not a big deal. I work in this industry and I am concerned about it because I understand that when things go wrong with wastewater treatment plants, they go horribly wrong. Methane and hydrogen sulfide gases are byproducts of organic material decomposition. Increased gas concentrations displace oxygen, which creates confined space hazards in the facility and nearby. Now, keep in mind, this facility backs onto somebody's property. It is completely adjacent to it. There is no level of separation. Methane gases can also cause explosions. Chemical treatments such as chlorine, ozone, chlorine dioxide, or ammonia create additional hazards. These gases are toxic at high concentrations. How would you feel about having a facility using these products hundreds of feet from where your children are kicking a soccer ball or where you rest your head at night? The potential for health risks and negative impact on quality of life isn't just supposition. These risks have been documented in academic journals. In 2016, Ventericus et al. Published a paper titled Impact on the Quality of Life When Living Close to a Municipal Wastewater Treatment Plant in the Journal of Environmental and Public Health. 235 inhabitants living within a 500-meter radius of a municipal wastewater treatment plant were included in the study, along with the control group. Significant risk for symptoms such as headache, unusual tiredness, concentration difficulties, the increased possibility for respiratory and skin diseases were all reported. A high rate of cases of being irritable and moody were also noticed. Significantly higher gastrointestinal symptoms were also reported among the cases in relation to the controls. The prevalence of pathogenic airborne microorganisms originating from the facility were reported in high numbers in sampling points close to the plant. But it gets worse.
Ms. Leviniak, I'm just going to remind you have about 60 seconds left.
Oh, I was told I was provided 10 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, I don't believe that's 10 minutes.
It's just about been 9. We're just coming up to that now, according to our legislative services secretary who has the timer on there. I was just giving you a heads up.
Okay, I didn't.
Sorry, we can go to the board for a motion to extend. So I was just about to, yeah. So I see that moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director Marsh.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. So please continue.
All right, appreciate it. I promise I won't be much longer than 10 minutes. So the hazards don't end there. 4 people were killed in an explosion in a treatment plant in Bristol, England in 2020. 2 people were killed in the Wichita Falls facility in Texas in 2018 after exposure due to fatal levels of H2S. An explosion at a facility in Kansas occurred in 2013. 2 people were killed and another was seriously injured in an explosion at a treatment plant in Daytona Beach, Florida in 2006. Just some quick examples from a Google search. There are many more. So where do we go from here? Firstly, our residents would like to be informed of the details of this project. First and foremost, we feel like we don't have the information that we need to really understand what's going on. I don't know if you can hear in the background, but I'm on Duluth and there's gravel trucks nonstop all day up and down the street, including idling in front of our properties. The Mill Springs Village wastewater treatment plant didn't require upgrades, it required regular maintenance. So it was compliant with government guidelines. To suggest otherwise, or say, you're getting a new plant, so good for you, is a little bit misleading. We're not getting a new plant. The CVRD is getting a new plant, and it's coming at risk to our community because of it. So what I'd like to ask is, has any consideration been given to our property values, especially for those that live so close to the facility? The risk of failure to operate as expected and lack of ability to revert to previous conditions in the event that those risks are encountered. What about the risks of pipeline rupture post-commissioning? As you can imagine, dealing with raw sewage, if that were to occur, that would be pretty horrific. So the immediate questions that I have, which we request a formal response for, if possible, is how was this project that was not needed or requested by Mill Springs Village approved? What was the approval process? Why was the CVRD promise for environmental testing canceled? Why was the construction and system turnover schedule never provided to the community? And I'll provide these questions in writing post-meeting. Will gas detectors and a public emergency response plan be put in place for residents of the community? Has a process hazard analysis been conducted? If so, by whom and what were the results? And if not, why not? Why is Mill Springs Village being told it must accept this incremental risk to our health, reputation, and property values without input or protection? Will the CVRD provide additional insurance to community residents in the event of facility failure? Is the CVRD assuming any risk to homeowners for this project? What message does the CVRD have for the residents of Mill Springs on how this project will be handled going forward? And I know there's a few members of the community. I do believe these sessions are recorded and available to the community after. So my message to the community in Mill Springs is, this is your family, your home, your community, and your environment. There's a lot of information out there available online on the hazards of facilities such as this. And you have government representatives and community representatives that you can connect with and get information. So get on social media, join the conversation, contact your strata council and find out what's going on. Contact your MLA and area directors and provide your feedback. And ultimately, let's keep the conversation going and let's get some two-way dialogue going here, because those of us that live so close to the facility feel like we're totally out of the loop, and that's incredibly frustrating. So I'm taking that first step by meeting with you all here today and sharing my thoughts and what I know to date. I'm looking forward to hearing more information and ultimately having our questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laviniak. Did I get it right?
You did, actually. Well done.
I had a little chance to read it and practice in my mind, so thank you for that.
No
And we do very much appreciate your presentation to the board. I just want you to understand, process-wise, we don't make any resolutions or decisions based on a delegation, but I appreciate that you'll provide us those questions in writing. Please send it along to myself and the members of staff, and we will provide and endeavor to get you some of those answers. I did see Director Morrison and then Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Laviniak. A lot of information to unpack there, and I appreciate you taking the time to put your package together and provide that to us. I think our chair's laid it out fairly clearly, and I would like to refer this to staff for a report to come back to committee or to committee or board at a future date.
Thank you. That's been moved. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Director Marsh. So that motion is on the floor. I will go to my speakers list. Director Wilson.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, press the wrong button there. Thank you very much for that, Tanis. It's been a bit of an eye opener there. I'm a little bit unclear as to what the residents are actually seeking here. Are you seeking a stop work or a remain at the status quo, or are you at the moment just questioning the actual process that you've seen so far?
That's a great question. So I can speak for myself. I can't speak for all the residents, but for myself, we originally contested this project when it was first brought forward, obviously because of the proximity. We live so close. We had requested original risk analysis. We wanted to understand, had the CVRD actually considered the risk to nearby homeowners? And we weren't able to get that information. Hazard analysis when it comes to process, facility design, we wanted to see more information on the project to determine our level of comfort with it, to determine whether we felt it should go ahead or not. We weren't able to get that information. So at this point, our request right now is to get as much information as we can because we really don't have anything to work with.
Yeah, that's good. Follow up, please, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether you're aware or not. We had a similar problem here in Cobble Hill with the wastewater treatment plant. That's pretty much close to a lot of houses as well. And that's been upgraded to, and I'm no engineer in that particular field, it's been upgraded to a stage where most of the problems that did exist before have pretty much been minimized or eliminated. So if you have some time, by all means, come and take a look, contact me and we can go and take a look and meet with the engineering staff to see what that plant is doing as well, just as further background for you.
I would certainly be interested in that. Any additional information we can get at this point is beneficial for us. Like I said, as residents, we live 4 houses down from the wastewater treatment plant. We're very familiar with the risks associated with facilities like these. And to be frank, we're very nervous. There's construction going on. We don't know what's happening. We don't know when systems are coming online, and we don't know what risks have been identified for the community or how they've been mitigated. That communication hasn't happened to us as homeowners.
I'm sure Mr. Dennison would go. And so, yeah, contact me. You can come and take a look at what we've got here in Cobble Hill.
Thank you. And I will remind the board that we do have a motion to refer this to staff to get a report back, as well as we will be following up with Ms. Laviniak on the questions that are emailed to us. I have Directors Salmon and Marsh. Director Salmon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you, Tanis, for taking the time. I just want to echo my fellow directors. Appreciate you bringing these concerns. And I do see, notice Mr. Dennison in the taking notes, and he's certainly staff has lots of information, so I'm sure you'll be hearing the answers to your questions as soon as possible. So thanks again.
Fantastic. Really appreciate your guys' time. I know you're very busy, and we were kind of slotted in here on short notice, so really appreciate it.
Thank you. Director Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Chair Stone. I think that that was a very thorough presentation, Ms. Lavinovic. Thank you so much for that. And I think that staff has heard you and will be in touch if necessary. So I'd like to move that we call the question, please, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Leviniak, did it twice in a row, I think.
Very good.
Thank you very much. I know it's not always easy to come before the board and bring your concerns forward, but you did a great job, and thank you for that. And appreciate you managing through our process as well with our bylaws and things like that. So you will hear back from us soon, and we will, as a board, hear back about your concerns as well. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. And with that, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item C1 is correspondence from Sarah Prowse, Child and Youth Advocacy Centre Project Coordinator, Cowichan Women Against Violence Society, regarding Child and Youth Advocacy Centre request for a letter of support, and this is for direction.
Thank you. Any turn it over to the board, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have no hesitation in recommending that we provide this organisation with the letter of support that they're seeking.
Thank you. Would you be making the motion that we provide a letter of support? Okay, and that's been seconded by Director Toporowski. Any further discussion? Director Martman.
Thank you, and I'm glad to hear that this is something that's going forward. I just was not clear, who is the letter of support intended for? Where would this be going to?
I'd have to put that through to staff. I was unclear on that as well. I know Cowichan Valley Women Against Violence is the proponent, but I'm not sure who the letter of support would be directed to. Do we know?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, we would direct it back to the society in a generic way so that they could use it for whatever purposes.
Thank you. So it would be just that we support the concept. I saw my screen popped up and disappeared. So I think that it would be a general letter of support for the initiative, and that way they could use it in different conversations, either around funding or service provision or things like that.
Okay, I was just go back on this. It's just I was trying to get an insight into where they're headed, with what grant proposals or what they might be seeking. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Did I miss anyone? Seeing, Director Marsh.
I certainly can't speak for Cowichan Women Against Violence Society, but I know they're building a building and perhaps they're going to have some space in that or in their offices. And this will likely be for counseling support for children and youth who have been witnesses to abuse, and also advocacy for all kinds of things that are needed for women and their children, or men, but it's usually women, as they're leaving and transitioning to healing and having a more normal life. That would be my guess.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this is a motion to provide a letter of support. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Back to you, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee and Commission reports CR1, report and recommendations of the Corporate Services Committee meeting of February 10th, 2021.
Director McGonigal.
Thank you, Chair Stone. First of all, your complexion is a little pinker than your shirt, as you had noted earlier, but looks good all the same. Corporate Services Committee report. Your Corporate Services reports and recommends, 1, that staff prepare a report on the implications of the request to change the Canada Post mail identifier for Arbutus Ridge. 2, that the 2021 meeting schedule be reaffirmed as outlined in option 1 of the staff report to the February 10th, 2021 Corporate Services Committee meeting. And 3, that a webinar be scheduled with the Municipal Insurance Association of BC. With those, I will move those recommendations.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? Seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo and Director Morrison. You want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'd actually like to pull number 2, please.
Okay.
So I'll move 1 and 3.
Okay. So we've got 1 and 3 on the floor. This would be speaking to number 1 and number 3 then. Director Marsh. Your microphone is muted, Director Marsh.
Okay, now I have to think of how I can do this. I support number 3, but I don't support number 1. So does that mean I have to ask to sever?
Yes.
So can we sever those then, please?
Yeah, so we'll do each one individually. So if you'd like to speak to your concerns with number 1, again, this was for staff to provide a report.
I understand that. I just think that, you know, as Mayor Sebring mentioned when we talked about this last time, I mean, most of the Maple Bay area, their address is Duncan. I lived in North Cowichan for probably 8 or 9 years before I realized it, even though that's where I paid my taxes. I just mailed the check in because my address was Duncan. I just think there's so many little pockets of areas like this that we've tried before. I think I think staff could better use their time than to do that. So
Thank you.
I'm not going to support it.
Okay, thank you. I have next Director Wilson.
No, pass me by, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we've severed them. We're doing them individually. Any more speakers to number 1? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? Just keep your hands up there. Directors Kuhn and Marsh opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to number 2, Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate my opposition to the lack of meeting scheduled for August. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on number 2, Director Wilson?
Yeah, I'm in exactly agreement with Director Morrison on this one as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'm calling question on number 2. All those in favor? And those opposed? Directors Morrison, Kuhn, Wilson, and Sebring opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault, we're on to number 3, I believe, and that is that a webinar be scheduled with the Municipal Assurance Association of BC. Any speakers to that item? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? We found unanimity. Awesome. Moving on, Ms. Legault. Thank you, Director McGonigal.
Thank you. Item CR2 is the report and recommendations of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of February 17th.
Thank you, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Electoral Area Services Committee reports and recommends as followed that a revision of the Electoral Area Housing Needs Assessment Report be undertaken in 2022 for the next term.
And do you move that item?
Yes, I do.
Seconded by Director Morrison. Discussion on that item? Director Wilson and Director Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as you recall, that particular presentation went on for some considerable time and was not finished in the time we had available. When it was reconvened, it was not, the presenters were not available either. So as far as I can see, that particular presentation is not complete because I still have questions. One of the things that came up was the question that I asked was if any increases in property taxes, what impact that would have had that been included in the study, and the answer was no, it had not. Well, that's a major component of the housing availability of rental places. And this is what we're talking about, the availability of affordable housing and needs thereof. Now, if they have missed out a major component of everything that they've done with an 85-page report, by the way, then I don't see that it's been complete. And I can see you getting impatient there, but that's beside, I'm sorry. I want this report revisited this year. It's not complete and it's certainly not comprehensive by any means. And we haven't had a chance to question the two presenters fully. And I would like to see that come back again. Thank you.
Okay. So the only remark I have is that I know the parameters for the study was set out by the legislation by the province of British Columbia. I don't know if staff have any feedback on that, but that doesn't mean that it can't be augmented, but it would be outside of the scope of the grant that was received by the regional district. So just that, keep in mind, doesn't mean we can't augment it with more information. It just means that we had a grant and a legislative process that was required to be followed.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. But the motion here is to review it in 2022. That's too late. I would like to see it reviewed before and include some of the things that we're looking at, because you can't miss out a major component like that and say this is the correct answer, because it ain't.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Moving on to Director Marsh, then Smith, then Kuhn, I believe. And if I've missed anyone else, Director Sebring.
Yeah, I'm given I'm not on that committee. I didn't read the report. Is it, I'm sorry, my answering machine is talking. Is it separate from the Cowichan Housing Association report on housing needs in the Valley?
There's a regional report, and then there's a report specific to each electoral area and each municipality. I believe at our municipalities, we've received our individual reports. And so the electoral areas did theirs all together as the 9 electoral areas, and that's what this discussion is about.
And what year did they have that done?
It was just the last meeting. That's why the recommendation's on this agenda.
And it's going to be funded by a grant.
It's already been completed, Director Marsh. This was the presentation to the board and to, I believe your council's received it as well, maybe not yet. But the presentations by, I forget his name now, sorry, Mr. GP Rollo, George, and John Horn, to our councils and to our board.
So if I am to understand, if I have one last question, is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just done, but the area directors don't feel it's comprehensive enough?
That's, I guess, a good, yeah, the directors that have spoken to it thus far. And again, this is a long 5-hour discussion, I believe, at Electoral Area Services.
And so if it was to be undertaken again in 2022, is it only paid for by either grant or electoral area directors?
I believe that would come forward in a subsequent budget discussion, but as the grant, and I'd have to look to staff to clarify this, but as the grant was spent to create the legislated report that's required under the local or under the provincial legislation, I believe that any subsequent one would either have to apply for some funding or fund it amongst the electoral area directors or electoral area.
But not general government?
I don't believe so, but I'd have to put that through to staff.
Would you do that, please?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This is a discussion between you and one director. I don't find that right.
I appreciate that. There was a question. I answered it as is appropriate, and I've directed staff to respond to the question that I couldn't answer.
I'll jump in, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. So
please.
The study did follow the legislated parameters for conducting the housing needs assessment. So I believe we were looking at, there was a minor correction to, I believe it was area F data. And we were also looking at area G just to confirm that areas that are under the jurisdiction of the Thetis Island Local Trust Committee weren't included in the figures for area G. So we're confirming that before the reports get sent back to the province. But otherwise, there is no sort of known error with how the study was conducted. So I want to be clear about that. And just to report back from the Electoral Area Services Committee, there was considerable discussion about the quality of the data, which is based largely on the 2016 census. And so in using that data, there are obviously some limitations because we are looking at data that's now almost 5 years old, particularly income data. And so there was a thought to potentially update numbers following the conclusion of the the next census. And we would likely have the results of that census in 2022. So that was the focus, and there was no discussion about whether the results should be updated for just the electoral areas or for electoral areas and municipalities, because obviously that would require discussion with all of the directors present. Thanks.
So this is only covering the electoral directors.
Sorry, follow up. And again, we've gone through several cycles, so I'll give you one more follow up and then I'll move to the speaker.
Well, I just want someone to tell me, yes, it's just area directors paying for this particular report or not.
So the scope of the update was not specified at the committee.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you, Director Marsh, if you need to. I do have a bit of a speakers list. I have Directors Smith, Kuhn, Sebring, Martman. I'll go to Director Smith next.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, after the meeting for EASC, I did send an email indicating that, the report shows 200 additional homes for Area G, and that needs to be rectified. It's either confirm it or correct it, because 200 additional homes, if we don't have them, if we have them, I'd like to see the taxation on that. But also I think there was an additional 200 residents. So if somehow they drew material from Islands Trust as Area G, I think we need to really clarify and get back, because all the projections are not accurate if we're looking at homes that don't comply with this specific data set that was required. So yeah, before we move forward on this filing of this document, I'd like to make sure that Area G is actually correct. Thank you.
And I believe Ms. Charolf just reflected that before that moves forward to the province. But again, we are discussing the motion on the floor. Okay, Director Kuhn, then Sebring, then Martman.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what's the outcome of this report? Like what was the purpose and what is going to come out of it?
So for the lengthy discussion at EASC, I guess that wasn't covered. Ms. Charolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the housing reports were, as you know, legislated by the province. Local governments are required to complete them. So presumably that information will be used by the province, but it will also be used to support future planning within the electoral areas and the municipalities. And staff are of the opinion that, the information should be as accurate as is possible in order to complete the planning projects that we do in the future.
Thank you. Director Kuhn, is that okay? You're good? Thank you. Director Sebring, then Martman, then Toporowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to turn my video off because I'm a little jerky here. I've got a slow connection. I find this whole thing a little bit confusing, frankly. I mean, we got a grant to spend a whole bunch of money to do a full housing needs assessment for the entire CVRD. I don't have, forgive me, but as a non-electoral area director, I don't have any background on why this is coming forward. I'm hearing there may be a few minor errors that may need to be tweaked, but the notion that we want to do this again in a year just doesn't make sense to me. I do wordsmith the motion and sort of drill down into it, and it says that a revision of the electoral area housing needs assessments, that to me excludes the municipalities. I mean, from a North Cowichan perspective, we're not unhappy with our portion of the report. If there's problems with the EA portions of that report in terms of some stats that are wrong, yeah, they need to be corrected before they go to the province. But I'd be really hesitant to embark on an entire new housing needs assessment in 2022. You know, is there a problem in 2022? Do we do it again in 23? How much money do we want to spend? This was mandated by the province. We did it. If there's errors, let's correct them. But this notion of let's go back and do it again next year, unless somebody can give me a compelling reason, I have a real problem voting in favor of this.
Thank you. I'll say that Ms. Charolf did just explain that it was the reason they had put 2022 was because the updated census data would be available. So instead of working with the 5-year-old data, but I do support your view that based on the motion I'm seeing, this is for the electoral areas, not the municipalities, and therefore I would be loath to be involved in funding such a subsequent study. But again, clarity from staff, if you please, on the financing part of this electoral area housing needs assessment in 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff would be able to come forward when we are working on the 2022 budget with a supplemental item for electoral area planning that would identify the costs of doing the update. I haven't spoken with community planning staff to understand the extent of the study that would be needed and whether that would simply be a desktop study to update the numbers, or whether some significant consultation activities would be needed as well. I'm thinking it's more the former in simply looking at the data and updating the data. And so that might be a less costly study than what was completed for this initial needs assessment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Does that answer your question, Director Sebring? Okay. Director Martman, then Toporowski, then Marsh, then Wilson, hopefully to close. Oh, sorry, Morrison, if I missed you, I apologize. I'll get you in there. Director Martman. Director Martman?
No sound, Ben.
Yeah. I heard you earlier.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair Stone. And Ms. Sheriff has covered most of it, so I don't want to repeat it. Other than when we had the presentation, I think Director Wilson was correct there. We didn't complete the review part, to entirety, and I think that's a piece that's just part of the ongoing process that we should complete at some point. Going forward to have, because there's a few questions on Area H that I have, and I don't mind putting them forward in paper and doing it but it was very helpful to have the experts there present. The second thing is about, so that's a review, and now we're talking about revision. And Ms. Sheriff also mentioned like an update. And my understanding is that we're working from 2016 data to produce this needs report, and that having the 2020 data or 2021 data would be just give us a better picture of what we're looking at going forward. We're working on 4-year-old data. And so I didn't see this as necessarily being huge, and maybe it will turn into something bigger than I had envisioned, but I thought this was really about a revision. This was about recreating the whole thing. It was about taking that new data, inputting it so that you can better see or predict what may be going forward. So I think it's about using the terminology around, let's finish our review, let's move on to a revision when we have new data. And if we have to go beyond, the concept of just updating it to something more vigorous, then perhaps that's a discussion on dollars and what at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to modify the speakers list because Director Morrison hasn't spoken on this. So I have Director Toporowski, Morrison, then Marsh, then Wilson. Director Toporowski.
Thank you, Chair. So I will be supporting this motion, but the other thing that I had was that in my notes, I know that the province has required all governments to do this study or make up reports for their community by April 2022. So, is this going to give enough time for each electoral area to submit their concerns and adjust the report? And also, I do have a note here that we all have to do this every 5 years afterwards. So it is a good thing to review things coming into 2022, because that'll give a lot of time for each and every one of the area directors to overlook the information that's before them, and yeah, anyway. And I think it ties in with housing needs and how we're going to look at in the future, and how we're going to be building our homes differently, or are we? That's the question, right? So just wanting to add that. I won't add any more to to clearing up the mud here, but anyway, thanks.
Thank you. I believe Director Morrison next, and then Marsh, and then Wilson. Did I miss anybody? I don't want to miss anyone again. I'm not seeing any other hands. I will remark that because our process was truncated as well, we have invited the group back, and the electoral area directors may want to invite the group back to their committee to discuss further if they have unanswered questions on this phase. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll not repeat what our 5-hour meeting went through. What this is about is a forward-thinking idea to give the next board, the next electoral area directors, for the next term, the ability to have fresh, relevant data to help the planning department and directors to make effective decisions based on new census information. You know, this is sort of a one-off opportunity to take something that's just been completed, and this is almost like a placeholder so that staff know we want them to put forward a supplemental for the budget next year. We can look at that, and if it's a outrageously high cost, we can say, oh, we thought it was a good idea, but I guess not. Is there an abbreviated version? So this is simply about some forward thinking. We can have a fresh, relevant document available for the next board to make great decisions, available for staff to make good recommendations to us. And you know what? If this is such a good idea, maybe there might be a municipal director that might want to recommend a subsequent resolution that we put this to regional services, and they might want to have it done for the municipalities as well. So this is a pretty straightforward thing. Let's put it in the queue. Let's let staff come back to us with the budget next year, and we can move forward on this if we think that there's dollars available to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Directors Marsh and then Wilson.
So having not been there for the 5 hours, I can't promise that I won't repeat it, but I'm looking right now at the Cowichan Valley Regional District Municipality of North Cowichan Housing Needs Assessment Data Report dated January 2021. And it was done by Modus and Rollo and Associates for the CVRD. And it says that there's one overarching one and then individual ones. So is there a appetite to table this until the new census data is released and then make that decision then? Because at this point, it doesn't really make sense to me to talk about a revision when it might just be updating a few numbers. And, you know, we have the housing fund. Perhaps they could update the numbers. So if it's in order, I'd like to make a motion to table until the 2021 census is reported.
That would, I believe, be in order procedurally. Do we have a seconder for that? Okay, seconded by Director Nicholson. As motions to table are unusual to me, never had to deal with one. Ms. Legault, can you just assist me? Is it just, is there a debate on a motion to table? I think we're all a little thrown off, but go ahead.
So the motion to table wouldn't be the correct motion in this scenario, because tabling is normally to put it aside for
bring it back later
to deal with something urgent in the meeting. So you could postpone it. That would be appropriate.
Okay, well, that's what I would suggest, that we postpone it till the data is the new data is confirmed.
Okay, and does the seconder still want to second that motion? Okay, thank you. I just have a question for staff on that motion. I'm not sure census data will be out before the legal requirement to have this report is submitted. Usually it comes out April, May in the following year of the census. So being that legislatively this must be submitted before April of 2022, is that even possible?
So, Mr. Chair, the reports that have been completed will be submitted to the province. They were received by the board. They were officially received by the board. So they will be obviously reviewed and with minor corrections made if needed, but they will be submitted to the province in order to meet the legislative requirement, which is that the reports be completed before that date in 2022. So those are the legal reports to meet the 5-year requirement, and the report would not need to be completed for another 5 years. So in the interim, the board has the option to look at updated figures. You might not even want to call it an updated housing needs assessment report. You could look at an updated set of figures that could be used to inform planning. Or you could look at sort of the schedule at which you approach your housing needs assessment going forward, and look at potentially advancing that subsequent report to not have such a big gap between the completion of the census and the completion of the housing needs assessment report. But that's also part of a bigger discussion around resourcing.
Thank you. So I just want to get some clarity. The motion is actually that this revision take place in 2022, yet the motion to refer or to delay this has been to delay it until 2022. I feel like the motion and then the postpone motion are essentially the same motion. I see Mr. Carruthers nodding his head. Director Marsh, did you have a follow-up from Ms. Chorlf?
Well, I'm not sure that once we got the new data that a whole revision would be needed, but it sounds like I'm just gonna see what happens when you call the question. Okay.
Thank you. I have Director Staples who hasn't spoken, and then Director Wilson to close, and then we'll call the question on the referral postponement motion. Sorry, Ms. Legault, again, another motion I've never seen before. But I guess it's sort of a referral motion to 2022. Okay. So Director Wilson, and then
actually, Mr. Mayor, Chair.
Director Marsh, I've recognized Director Wilson. If you'd like to get back on the speakers list, I'll do so.
It's up to Director Stone or Chair Stone.
Sorry, I have my apologies. Director Staples, then Wilson, then back to Director Marsh.
I don't see the point of this motion, to be honest, because I feel like it's the same. So I'm not sure. I mean, I would defeat this because to go back to the original motion, but I can speak to either one because I think it's the same motion essentially. I don't think that there's anything wrong with wanting to update figures with new data. I think that that's actually that makes sense, and it's the way that the province put this funding out to have it so close to the next census data. Maybe that's something that we could write to the province about, because that will happen again the next time in 5 years when this happens. It's still going to rotate out of order with data. So anyways, that being said, I feel like there's absolutely, this is a reasonable thing to ask for and to do with new data, and it does not have to be a whole entire new process. And the electoral areas, I think, that are doing the right thing with this, and I completely support it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Director Wilson, and then back to Director Marsh to close, and then, Director Nicholson, then I will put you after Director Wilson. He's already been recognized, and then I'll go back to Director Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Director Marshman is quite right. Regardless of whether the last meeting took 5 hours or 5 days, we didn't finish it. It needs to be finished. We need to call those the guys back again for the questions that need to be asked. Some of which was, if you remember as well, I did ask whether any of the area directors have actually been consulted in their deliberations. Well, nobody was. And if anybody knows their local areas and what's going on, then it surely is the area directors. We need to have our input in there as well. The very fact they missed that one as well really does concern me. And exactly, I used to think I was a fairly clear thinking, logical person, but to be quite honest, I'm totally confused as to what resolutions. As far as I can see, the second resolution is exactly the same as the first. So which one we're voting on, I have absolutely no idea.
Well, I can be clear with that. The motion was recognized. So as Director Staples spoke to, I would recommend that we defeat the motion on the postponement and go back to the motion, which essentially would be, it looks like a similar outcome. I have Director Nicholson and then Director Marsh, and then we'll get to calling some questions, hopefully.
Thank you. Maybe I'm confused, but I actually thought of postponing a decision on whether to undertake a revised report would be a wise thing to do, because people have so many concerns about things that were not addressed in the housing needs assessment. So it strikes me that it would be useful to take a look at what we actually need and how it will be used before we decide if we want to revise that report or maybe do something slightly different. Because that, of course, is the one that's mandated by the province. We've done our job, we've submitted, it's done. So we could actually do something that might meet our needs more appropriately. And we won't really know that until the new census data comes out and we have further discussions on issues raised by Director Wilson. So I thought the postponement motion was actually appropriate.
Thank you. Director Marsh to close.
Yeah, I can't add anything. I agree completely with Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I'll call the question. This is on the postponement motion. All those in favor? And opposed? Keep your hands up for a moment for Ms. Legault. Directors Salmon, Toporowski, Martman, Morrison, McGonigal, Yanni DiNardo, Kuhn, Acton, Wilson, Staples, Smith, Sebring opposed. The motion is fails. Back to the original motion. Any more discussion? Director Morrison.
I'm going to ask the question be called.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? Director Sebring, Wilson, opposed, the motion carries. Thank you. And again, just as a comment, as Ms. Trolf had said, this discussion will be brought back as part of a supplemental budget discussion, and then the board will be able to have another sort of decision-making point on how we move forward in looking at that down the road. Thank you. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Director Yanni DiNardo, thank you for your report. It was so long, I didn't realize.
Well, I have another one, so don't push me off too fast. I'm still here.
Ms. Legault.
CR3 is the report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of February 17th, 2021.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you. Your Electoral Area Services Committee reports and recommends as follows that I move 1 through 7.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Smith. Is there any discussion on these? Nobody wants to pull any of those items? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We'll finish this one and then we'll just take a short break. I'll go back to Director Yanni DiNardo for the Electoral Area Directors Only items.
Thank you. Electoral Area Directors Only 8 through 13, I move.
Does anyone want anything pulled? No. Seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? For Electoral Area Directors Only, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We will just take it.
That is my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Yanni DiNardo. We'll take just a short recess, 10 minutes, be back at 2:40 to resume our staff reports. Thank you all very much.
And
Camera's live.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I was going to kind of do a turn and say welcome back, but we are, I believe, Ms. Legault on staff reports.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Item SR1 is a staff report from the Legislative Services Division with the results of the alternative approval process for Saltaire Water Loan Authorization, and the recommendation is that the certificate of results for the alternative approval process for CVRD Bylaw 4328, Saltaire Water System Service Loan Authorization Water Treatment Upgrades, $3.7 million, Bylaw 2020, be received.
Moved by, Director Smith, seconded by Director Martman. Is there any discussion on this? All I will say is congratulations to the director and the community of Saltaire. I think it's a great step forward in that project. So with that being said, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
SR2 is a staff report from Community Planning on the Regional District of Nanaimo Regional Growth Strategy Amendment referral, and the recommendation is that the Regional District of Nanaimo be advised that the CVRD supports the proposed Regional Growth Strategy Amendment in the vicinity of Nanaimo Airport.
Thank you. And was that moved, Director Sebring? Thank you. And I see we've got Mr. Tippett on the line. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion? Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair. I know I'm late to the game on a lot of topics, and this is one of them, I'm sure. I understand that you've had presentations in the past about the airport, but living next to the airport, it is of interest to our area residents, and I think I just wanted to make sure about process is being followed and how we go forward with articulating if we have comments. So I guess I'm not really standing for this motion in that it's just supporting, or I'm not sure what the process would be to add for more additional information that we may have concerns around. And I think the largest concern in this area for our residents is the aquifer. And I wanted to get on the record to speak about how important this aquifer is, how much of a resource and how vulnerable and vital it is to our future. And we share this with the Regional District of Nanaimo. Their plans for their amendments to the Regional Growth Strategy changes the containment of their rural village. I'm not sure how that will impact things. I know right now the village does not have any waste management or collective water system. It is wells and septics. Maybe it will be an improvement. Maybe it won't. But I would want to have assurances that we voice our concern that what goes forward is done in the best interest of the aquifer in terms of development. The other piece that I'm not clear on, and I may refer this to staff, is that when this is a non-conforming use to start with, the airport in general, and I know we're dealing in our area with some non-conforming uses, and how do those things evolve within our area? And if it's one of the things in non-conforming is that they moved agricultural land was moved out of the agricultural reserve and done with a covenant. And so maybe Mr. Tippett could speak a little bit to the covenant and maybe the impact and what that means, because I am not confident I understand, and maybe this is what I need to learn more about, is who actually is going to control the development on the airport lands. Is it going to be the regional district? Is it going to be the Nanaimo Airport Commission? Like, who is the owner of the land? So, and has authority under the airport. So I have lots of questions, and maybe Mr. Tippett, you could start with explaining a little bit around the covenant that's in place, and then who in the end is going to be able to have authority, because I would really want to support that the regional district gets the authority, and how do we support them getting that?
Thank you. Mr. Tippett, there's a lot rolled up in there, but I think you're aware of these concerns, so please go ahead.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. First of all, I'll say that we did take some steps in the last couple of days of contacting our colleagues at Regional District of Nanaimo to, first of all, ascertain whether we would have some additional time to comment on this, and they assured us that definitely is the case. In fact, this particular referral at this point is informal in the sense that the RDN board has not yet given readings to this proposed growth management strategy amendment bylaw, and so after they do that reading, there will be a 60-day period for us to comment. So that gives us ample time to deal with it. My suggestion would be maybe it should be referred back to committee. The staff member from RDN indicated, that's Nicholas Redpath, he's a planner there responsible for this file, that he would be prepared to attend an upcoming EASC meeting if that were done to answer questions. I think a lot of what Director Martman is asking are questions that we can't answer as CVRD staff either, because we're not responsible for their planning framework. So I think, you know, with respect to this particular report, you know, that might be an appropriate outcome if that's the board's desire. On the specific question on the covenant, I did some preliminary research on this. It seems as though there was a subdivision of land around 1998, 1999. But let me back up. The entire airport site is in the agricultural land reserve. It's still in the agricultural land reserve. And it seems that circa approximately 1998-99, there was a subdivision done of the lands upon which the terminal building are located, as well as the RV sales and some of the other, hangars and so forth. And as a condition of that subdivision, the ALC required the registration of the covenant. And what the covenant says is that only airport-related commercial and light industrial activities are permitted within the area that is subject to the covenant, which is those lands I've described. Essentially, all of the hangars down to the RV servicing facility, the big green fields, the parking areas, and where the RV sales is up next to the highway. Who would enforce that covenant would be the Agricultural Land Commission, I expect. But again, I think some of these questions could be explored in more depth were this referred back to committee with RDN staff in attendance.
Thank you. Sorry, if Ms. Director Martman, do you have a follow-up question right now? I think that referral motion would be in order, but I just have a question. Would it be to electoral area services or regional services, as this airport has impacts? I know this is specific concerns for Area H residents, but there are broader impacts to the entire region. So I would defer to staff's judgment on where the best committee to refer it to might be.
If that was addressed to me, Mr. Chair, yes, that's a good point. I think this may have gone through regional services last year when we were responding to the OCP and zoning amendment referrals. So yes, that's a very good point.
Thank you. I'd go back to Director Martman. Did you want to, sorry, somebody's microphone keeps cutting out on, can you just make sure if you're not speaking that your microphone is muted, please? Director Martman, did you want to consider making that referral motion?
Yes, I'd like to do that to make a referral back to staff for a fulsome report on this.
So I would say refer to Regional Services Committee, yeah, and request that staff provide a report.
As you said.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Seconded by Director Morrison. And just finally, I would say that I felt that we were somewhat rushed with the previous referral. We didn't get the opportunity for deeper discussion. So I'm thankful that we have this opportunity now, because as an Area H resident, I know from hearing from my neighbors that this is a point of concern, especially with some of the incidents with, like, as Director Martman said, non-conforming uses. Any further discussion on this referral? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Tippett, thank you for your guidance, and Mr. Martman, thank you for the great questions. Or Director Martman. Ms. Legault, moving on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SR3, staff report from Community Planning regarding AVICC resolution on cannabis. And the recommendation is that the resolution be forwarded to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities for consideration at the 2021 convention.
Thank you. Director Wilson, is that moving? Yes. And seconding, Director McGonigal. This is definitely a region-wide issue, and I appreciate that some particular areas have some particularly challenging situations, but I can speak for, I think from at least our municipal perspective, this is also a big challenge, so happy to support this. Any other speakers to this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you all for that. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SR4 is a staff report from Parks and Trails regarding Canada Healthy Communities Initiative Grant Program, and the recommendation is that a grant application in the amount of $250,000 be submitted to the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative Grant Program for the 4.85 kilometre Cowichan Valley Trail widening and surfacing project.
Thank you. That was moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Staples. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving right along, Ms. Legault to bylaws.
Item B1, CVRD Bylaw 4328, Saltaire Water System Service Loan Authorization, Water Treatment Upgrades, $3.7 million, Bylaw 2020 for adoption.
Moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
B2, CVRD Bylaw 4337, Lake Cowichan Fire Protection Service Amendment Boundary Extension, Bylaw 2021 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
B3, CVRD Bylaw 4355, Missachi Lake Sewer System Service Amendment Boundary Extension, Bylaw 2021 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any discussion? Director Marsh.
Yeah, I just have a question. Is there public hearings on any of these things, or they just, we go 1 to 3 and then the next time we adopt?
Go through to Ms. Legault, but I believe these are not land use bylaws, so I put it through to Ms. Legault, though.
That's correct. These boundary extensions are service establishment bylaw amendments. So after third reading, we require consent of the director prior to adoption.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. BEA1, so for electoral area directors, CVRD bylaw number 4346, electoral area F, Cowichan Lake South Scotts Falls zoning amendment bylaw 2021 for adoption.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any discussion? This is for electoral area directors only. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault, I believe that takes us to question period, so we'll just take a brief 10-minute recess. It's 2:56. We'll be back at 3:05 and we'll be waiting for our questions. See you all in 10 minutes. Yes, that was me waving at you, Susan. Feels like I hardly recognize people. It's been so long since we've seen faces. Ms. Legault.
Camera's live.
Thank you very much. And we're going through the question period, and through all of our technological marvels, we do have Ms. Kaufman in our gallery today for question period. Ms. Kaufman, please go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Kaufman. Can she not hear me, Ms. Legault? Am I muted or something?
No.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Kaufman, go ahead. We're in question period. You're up.
Thank you. There's just a replay here. You're repeating, sorry. No.
Sorry, Ms. Kaufman, if you have another stream going like YouTube in the background, you just need to close it. No?
I don't think I do, but I'll try it.
Okay,
Okay, is that better?
go ahead. Please go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, is that better? Perfect, thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No real question, but I would like to, if with your permission, Mr. Chair, just give a thank you to the directors for allowing the public to participate virtually. We really appreciate it. And if I may as well, give a thank you to staff for getting that information out on the CBRD website homepage. It's much appreciated. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. And yes, you just violated our rules, but hey, we're in a whole new world, so you're welcome to do so this one time. And next time you can just end it like Cliff used to with "Isn't that great?"
Isn't that great? We consider it great. Thank you. Goodbye.
And I agree with you. It seems great. So thank you very much for coming today. Feel free to listen to the rest of the meeting. Ms. Legault, do we have any emailed in questions for question period?
Nothing.
Okay, so we're going to ask then, I believe, Ms. Kaufman, thank you for coming today, and we'll continue to work out the technical glitches here and there, but I would say that I need a motion to go into closed session.
In accordance with Community Charter Section 91 F, G, and A.
As Ms. Legault just said, moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We'll leave this session and be back in closed session as quickly as we possibly can. Ms. Legault is going to get it started.